You mentioned a significant experience with a non-profit that faced challenges due to the lack of a business plan. So, what key lessons did you learn from this experience that you now impart to others?
I graduated college with a bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. There was no jobs in 1982, so I got into the Air Force. There's about, they've estimated 200,000 people, men and women, get out of the military, U.S. military. So it could be the fourth and fifth year before you can get any money to fund your nonprofit. I wrote a white paper. We thought about it. We met over at a pub and drank a beer. And we said, yeah, this seems good. Let's invite about 8 to 10 people in and see. Let's do a couple beta weeks and see if it works. And we did that in February and early March of 2020. We wanted to get in and start serving. And I think that was the absolute wrong thing to do, right?
So, welcome back to Storefront Strategies. I am delighted to welcome Don Gleason onto the show today. Hi, Don. How are you?
I am doing great. A little hot here in Texas. It's going to be well over 100 Fahrenheit. Would we just say 44 Celsius? It's too hot. But
which is mad because I'm based in Scotland, and as recording this, we're at the beginning of June and we've had sleet today. It's 7 degrees.
Yeah, such a beautiful country. I want to get over there and explore it. But I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here and I appreciate the opportunity.
That's great. Let's crack on then. So what I'd like you to do to start off with is to give the audience a 60-second pitch of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I graduated college with a bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. My focus was on environmental. And I kind of say that my focus was cleaning America's waters. I had seen so much pollution, so much contamination, so many dead fish, the putrid smells. I wanted to make an impact and clean that up. And there was no jobs in 1982, so I got into the Air Force, U.S. Air Force. And I thought I'd be there for 4 years. I stayed for 27. But the environmental piece led me into leading people, getting to know people, building relationships with people, helping people. And I became a leadership expert. I got out of service and I joined corporate as a management consultant and worked my way back into an entrepreneur, helping companies and individuals grow in leadership. And where that's led me lately is my focus in on career transition. So many people are in a job where the role's not right, the culture's not right, the leader is not right, doesn't motivate them. All of that means they struggle in the job. A lot of people, there's just a tough environment out there right now to get a job. So I really love helping people find that job that energizes them so they can have the life that fulfills them. And we're only here for 70, 80 years, right? It's a blip on the history. Seems like a long time, but we should enjoy that time. We shouldn't have 40 years of struggle through work, trying to find joy in the evening and the weekends, and then do it in retirement when your body hurts and aches and pains and the kids are grown up and your grandkids are often in sports. Enjoy life all the way through it. So that's me. I'm really trying to help people do that way. Decrease the divorce rate, decrease the suicide rate. There's a number of different things we might talk about.
Sounds brilliant. Very good. So Don, with your extensive background in both military leadership and corporate management consulting, how do you emphasize the importance of having a well-structured business plan for new entrepreneurs?
It really came for me when I started my first business. Being an entrepreneur, I built the business plan, and it gave me direction. Right, it started setting me up to what is my business, my product, my service, what truly is my client, what is my marketing. But when I started a nonprofit back in 2020, just about the time COVID hit and everybody started shutting down, we did a business plan that year, and we had stated outward a vision of we were doing masterminds to help military in that career transition. So we'd get 8 to 10 people together and we would work together, help each other through the process. That was achieving great success. But we said, second year, we want to go from 3 to 9, and the third year to 27. As soon as we did the business plan and we looked at 27, and we looked at the time requirements to do all that, it was like, we can't do all the 27 different masterminds. We can't do all the recruiting. We can't do all the support. We need to hire other coaches. We need to hire other facilitators. We need to get a better software system. It just opened up the many different things we needed to do to grow that business from 9 to 27. It started giving us again a path. So to me, that value of writing it down, we too often put our business plan in our head, right? Michael Gerber in E-Myth Revisited talks that 50% fail in the first shot. 80% in the first 5 years, and the next 80% in the next 5 years. So 96% fail in 10 years. And a big part of it is they haven't figured out really the processes, the business plan, what they do, how it fits in their life, all those different things he talks about. That's why I love the book. I've used it a number of times to help military start businesses. But I think it comes down to giving us direction. But when you start writing it down and thinking into those pieces, it uncovers in your mind all the different things it takes to get to that next step.
I remember reading the Michael Gerber books for the first time and it being a complete revelation. And it explains so much because I've been running different businesses for a long time. And it was the first time I'd seen it explained as somebody working in the business as a tradesperson and the manager and the entrepreneur. Because what I couldn't work out is why what I did and how I was different. I have a tech company, but I'm not a technician. But that is because I'm a business person who does business development and administration and that side of things. And I saw a gap in the market and understood how to fill it, as opposed to having a passion for computing. I mean, I love tech. My background is in tech. I did television and radio production at uni. I taught it at college afterwards as well. So I've got a technical background, but I never had any ambition to work in the tech industry. I kind of just fell into it. But then having sought the path through it, I think it was Michael Gerber that really helped me to understand that actually what I was doing was right. Because I think there was a degree of imposter syndrome there of who am I to be leading a tech company? I'm not a technician. Well, actually, I'm the right person because I'm the entrepreneur. So I love his books.
In fact, my nonprofit partner and I we were struggling in our relationship, and we had been studying DISC, personality assessments, and I'm certified as a consultant in DISC, and we were going through that, and we were trying to figure things out, but it wasn't answering all the questions. And I happened to have my knee replaced in June of 21, so it's almost like exactly 3 years ago today, and we were recording this, and I was laying there because I couldn't get up and do a lot. I couldn't sit at the desk because my knee would swell up. So I went to YouTube and said, give me a book, an audio book about business. And his popped up number one. I said, let's just see. So I would sit and listen. And by the way he talked through it, but the three categories, entrepreneur, manager, and technician. And we started thinking about that. What is our natural personalities? And unfortunately, I'm that manager too, but I'll take on all kinds of things. And he was the entrepreneur. And he wanted to just do the overall stuff, throw out ideas, and walk away. And expect me to run with them all. And it's like, I don't have that kind of time, right? I need a staff. And we couldn't agree to get a staff. So it was like I was going to have to start working 70-hour weeks. And I said, nope, that ain't going to happen. So we're either going to get more people, you're going to pick up something, or I'm walking away. And that's what I did.
Brave move.
But we weren't moving. Yeah, we weren't moving in the right way.
You mentioned a significant experience with a non-profit that you started in 2020 that faced challenges due to the lack of a business plan and formation agreement. So what key lessons did you learn from this experience that you now impart to others when helping them to craft their business plans?
Well, most people, I was going to say most military, but most people just jump in. And I think that's what Michael Gruber says, right? We just jump in. We see a need. I want to do, like you just said, TV or a radio production. I want to do, our mastermind, right? I want to help military. I want to do HVAC repair, whatever it might be. We're good technicians, and we try to jump in and start and figure out if it's going to work or not, right? We don't want to spend months creating a business plan, a market survey, all those different pieces. We just want to get in and see how it works. And that's what we did. We came up with the idea. I wrote a white paper. We thought about it. We met over at a pub and drank a beer and said, this seems to be, let's invite about 8 to 10 people in and see, let's do a couple beta weeks and see if it works. We did that in February and early March of 2020. And we're like, thumbs up. And we just pressed in. And we laid down a list of the things we had to get to. But we said we didn't want to delay. We wanted to get in and start serving. And I think that was the absolute wrong thing to do, right? The best part that we could have done is that formation agreement. This is what we're forming to do. This is what the structure of the organization is going to look like. These are the roles and responsibilities. This is how we're going to get out of this if at some point it's not working. Because I came down to 3 years in and I said, this isn't working. And we were 50-50. I was the president, but we were 50-50. So I had no way to force him out, and he didn't want to leave. And the only thing I could figure out legally was just wrapping up, walking away, and letting him take it over. And we didn't have anything in an agreement. And that was really uncomfortable. So you have to protect yourself. It's all about risk management, right? You have to look at the possibilities, good and bad, and how you're going to handle them, and who's going to handle them, and when you're going to bring on people, right? When you're going to bring that first virtual assistant, when you're going to bring your appointment setters, when you're going to bring what kind of criteria, so that you have some agreement up front. This is how we're going to work it. How about you? How did you see that working for you?
Well, I actually don't have a business partner, and it's a decision that I made. So I have a team, there's 7 of us, and we have a management team who I will talk through absolutely everything with and respect greatly. But I actually think that you need somebody that is going to have the broad shoulders and is going to say, well, actually, this is my thought and this is the way that we're going to go when there is a dispute. And I have a friend who there was 2 friends that started a business locally doing community broadband, and they needed a third person to come in to bring some funding in. So they did actually put a partnership plan in place, but there's no exit strategy. So where they're at the moment is the 2 that started the business are working great guns, and the other guy is not a business person, and he just keeps putting a spanner in the works and causing difficulties. And my friend, the only way he can think of actually getting out is actually selling his share of the business to somebody else, because there's no way of actually dealing with it and sorting it out. And he is so stressed out. And it is such a shame to see that they've worked so hard over the last few years on this to build this business. And actually, he doesn't want to do it anymore. He wants to give it away.
I had kind of a similar experience. I joined somebody else's nonprofit as a vice president of different tasks. And we were doing everything for free, but we were talking about building into a fee model. And I said, well, let's sit down, let's schedule some time to talk about the business plan and what is the strategy, because you're asking for more and more and more of my time. I didn't get into this to be a volunteer. I'll put sweat equity into it, but I need to have a vision of when this turns to a paycheck. And the CEO would not have that conversation.
You have to value people, though, because if you don't value people, they go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I think that happens way too often. So I think that's what Michael Gerber says. That's what we're agreeing to. It just happens way too often. People don't create a business plan. They don't have a vision. What is it the Bible says? When there's a lack of vision, people perish. Jobs fail. Companies fail. People fight. And it's just not worth it. I started waking up. Well, all of end of 22 and into 23, I was waking up with nightmares and just worried about things and stuff like that. And I noticed my resting heart rate was up 10 beats per minute, and I wasn't sleeping well. And I was like, something's got to change.
Yes.
I cannot let this continue. And I searched for the only way out.
A few years ago, a friend of mine, he'd been a chef for a long time. He'd been a chef for 28 years and was working at a local supermarket, but he'd always had a dream of opening a coffee shop. He loved that idea of serving good coffee and home bakes. So he did it without a business plan, and it didn't go well. He hired his ex-wife's mother, so his ex-mother-in-law, to help. And they weren't on good terms. So that didn't go well. So he ended up letting her go, which didn't go well. He didn't get a separate business bank account. So all the money was in together, and he lasted 10 months. And at the end of it, he was financially much worse off. He was relationally much worse off because his relationship with his ex-wife was damaged by the process because they still had children together. And it was just a horrendous experience. And he ended up going back working at the same supermarket on night shift because that's all that was available. So it was like a 1 year of hell for him. So this ideological dream of coffee and cupcakes turned into an absolute nightmare.
And you need to know, how much can you charge for the product? What are your expenses? All the different expenses, right? The facility, the utilities, the income, the products. What happens if these product prices go up 10% or 20%? Look at all the stuff that's happened over the last couple of years. Avocados have gone. If you have a Mexican restaurant, avocados are just shooting up like crazy. And if you have to raise your prices, can the market withstand those prices? You need to do some of that analysis. Right? It's all there. We had to figure out in our nonprofit, we just said, oh, we're just going to go out and raise money. There's a lot of companies in San Antonio. They've estimated 200,000 men and women get out of the military, U.S. military every year. About 6,000 in San Antonio. So there's plenty of companies who want to help those. But the problem was, as we found out when we got into it, they want us on the ground working for about 3 years before they even start talking. So it could be the 4th and 5th year before you can get any money to fund your nonprofit. And you're not charging the military for the service, so there's no income coming in. So knowing how to do that and building the relationships and knowing how to build it. Fundraising is not easy. It's a whole skill set to itself. I was on the board of the American Red Cross here in San Antonio. I became the board chair, and I was trying to work with my board members to help them. Here's the novice trying to help other people, and we're just trying to figure it all out. And some of the answers were, it's going to take me 2 or 3 years before I figure out who you can possibly approach. It's like we don't have that kind of time before we raise anything. Not for the Red Cross. Emergencies are happening.
So what would you say are the essential components that you believe every business plan should include? And how can entrepreneurs ensure they cover all the critical aspects effectively?
Oh, wow. That's a huge question. I'm going to go back to Michael Gerber's book. And I think the most important thing, and it's the hardest thing to figure out, is what do you want? Not what do you want for the business. Not what the business is going to do. It's what do you want? If you want a 40-hour-a-week, 8 to 5 job that has minimal risk, then maybe entrepreneur isn't for you, right? Or maybe there's only a certain type of entrepreneur. Because I know, like being a leadership trainer and coach, most people have a job during the day, and unless the company's hiring me to do it during the day, I'm usually doing things at night. I'm doing webinars at night. I'm doing coaching at night on the weekends. And if that's not what fits me in my lifestyle, that's not going to work. We have to wrestle with that one. I do that as I work with people on career transition. So they're getting out of the military. And I ask them, so tell me a little bit about what you want to do. Well, I want to add value to a company. I said, so what kind of company? Oh, one with good culture, good values. So what kind of culture and values would you determine as good? I'm not sure yet. Okay, we got some work to do. Right? And I end up working them all the way through a position description. And it's not one that they can find, it's one that they want to take. It fits their life, right? The amount of travel, the amount of hours I want to work, the type of work. Do I want to be an individual contributor? Do I want to work business development? Do I want to supervise people or not? Do I want to work inside or outside? And that's what I did in 2008, 2009 when I was getting out of the military. I went through all of those questions. And I kind of created a position description I was looking for. And then when I came up to Booz Allen Hamilton, it was like, bing! This is it. This is what I'm looking for. And I met with the leaders, and I started talking to them. I was like, yeah, I can work with these guys. They motivate me. We think alike. And so there's a lot of goodness there. But I think answer your question, really what you want. Now build the business to fit that, not the other way around. But when you build the business, right, what's the product service? Clear. Who's the audience for that? Sometimes people jump in and say, I want to figure out an audience and a problem, then I'll figure out the product and service. But it's like HVAC repair, right? I want to go in and repair Cenex units. I have a buddy of mine, best man at my wedding. He got into a dealership with Cenex, and he repaired heating, ventilation, air conditioning equipment. He picked a certain manufacturer. But now it was, who needs that? And he started going out and figuring out the marketing and the clients and the pricing and the repair and the travel. And you have to work through all of that, in the processes. One thing I'm working on now, and I don't have the book right in front of me, but The Coach Builder by Donald Miller. He designed, I think you've heard it, he takes the business like an airplane, right? The cockpit is the leadership, the engines are your sales and marketing, you've got a part for your finance. And I like the way he says that, right? Separate business account. And these are the 5 different accounts you're going to have within the bank, separate from your personal. And this is how the money flows through. Here's the criteria how the money flows through. And you can't fill that one until this one is at this certain point. So you set up those processes, and we tend to stop at the processes because we don't know what it is we want to do. We struggle with that in our nonprofit. And what things do we want to provide? And I said, I want to provide the DISC assessment. I want to help them understand themselves. So I created a process. This is how we have the first meeting with them. They agree to join the group. Once they agree to join the group, and they've come twice, I'll send them a note. Hey, would you be interested in the DISC assessment? Do you have time in the next 2 weeks? They say yes. I would send them the key code. They would go ahead and finish it, and we'd schedule immediately within a week the debrief. And I tracked all of those different steps for every person. And I could see how that timing all worked, and how I could evaluate that. So I went back at the end of the year, and I could say, how many of those initial emails where they said yes, did they not follow through? So you get some type of feel for your metrics of the business. And you got to set up those metrics. So I've talked a lot of different things, right? But it's what do you want? How are you going to set up the business? What is the market survey? Is that the right market survey for the business? Pricing, what will it withstand? What's the business plan? The processes, your org structure we haven't touched on. I'm kind of going right through Michael Gerber's book, right? The org structure. What positions do you need? Not now, but in the future, right? At some point, you're going to need a VP of finance and a VP of marketing, a VP of sales. Right now, it's you. You got them all. But at some point, I need to start moving those things away from me. And that's, again, that business plan of at what point do I see that happening? Because we tend to not hire people until it's way too late.
I think a lot of times with business plans, people answer the sexy questions. They answer the bits that they're passionate about, the things that they love, the things that really spark their imagination. And the nitty-gritty questions they tend to ignore and pretend they don't exist. But it's actually the nitty-gritty questions that make the difference, like the exit strategy when you've got a partnership, or exit strategies at all. How do you wind things down? How do you deal with taxes and bookkeeping and all the things that actually you don't really want to do? People tend to miss that.
But you have to do it. I tied in last year, it's about 17 months ago, with Grant Cardone. He's supposedly a self-made billionaire. And he really does a lot of neat things. And he had a course, and he talked about backwards engineering. So when you think about, this is the amount of money I want to make, this is how many clients I have to close on at this price, right? This is how many clients I have to make the offer to, because I'm only going to get some percentage, right? I went through at one point figuring this out for my nonprofit. If I go to X number, if I want to raise $1 million, I say a $2,000 average donation, I got to get whatever that number is, 500 people to donate, whatever that number is. And to do that, if I can close on 20% of them, I've got to talk, not 500, but I got to talk to 10,000. And I'm only going to get to a certain percentage of the people I initially talked to get to the offer. So I got to talk to I think I came up with 80,000. And to do that, we got to talk to so many people per day. And that's the one that came to me, and I talked to my partner. I said, we need to spend 8 hours a day making calls and talking to people. He says, can't do that. I said, I know, I can't do that either. So here's our options, right? And but when you backwards engineer to get to where you want to be, not just walk in and say, well, let's see who buys, right? I'm going to go out and talk to a bunch of people and talk to my friends and see who buys. That's a hope and a prayer. But if you backwards engineer it and you have some strategy to it, you can start to figure it out. Now, maybe you can't get to 80,000 or whatever that number I just said people a year, but you can get to some number. And as you start building some capital, now you can start hiring some people to do those things. So, but having all those conversations is important. I think you're exactly right. It's hard. You're making estimates. I work with people on budgeting. And I said, how much money do you need in about 10 years? And they're like, well, I have no idea. I said, well, let's make some estimates. I don't know how to make estimates. I said, what are your expenses today? And what are they going to be in 10 years? Well, I have no idea what's going to be in 10 years. Well, let's take an average 3% inflation rate. Right? It's been 3% for decades. Let's just assume it's going to be 3%. We'll re-engineer that in 2 years, and we'll see if 3% is it. Back in the 2000, 2010, even in 2015, it was much lower than that. It wasn't until COVID that it went up real high. So it actually was staying pretty stable. But if you just constantly keep measuring it, you can keep adjusting. And that's worked really good for me personally, and I know it would work real good for me business-wise as well.
I think one of the interesting things, you're exactly right with the reverse engineering, and that's the way that we operate, is we look at the big picture, we look at where we want to be, and then we work backwards. But what we've found is that you also need that flexibility then to not be rigid about the steps going forward to achieve that end goal, because that end goal can move. You can start on the process and actually find that what you're doing isn't what people want, or it isn't what you want, or it's just not going to work for whatever reason. So there needs to be that flexibility going forwards as well.
Yeah. Oh, here's a tough one. Or it's what they want, but they won't buy it from you.
Yes.
They'll buy other things from you, but not what you want to sell them. I would love to sell people a big leadership workshop, but what most people will buy from me at this point is the disc consultation, the disc workshop, help them understand, and then we do some, call it a leadership game. It's like a team leadership assessment, and get them communicating, and we start identifying different things, and then we work slowly into the bigger plan. But you can't walk in, they're not interested in the big plan right up front. So figuring out the buyer's journey. Right? So most of the time, like an HVAC repair, you get introduced to a company because your system broke. So you need to be able to come out and repair the system. You want to sell them a new system because that's where you make the big money, right? A car salesman makes the big money selling the car. But for HVAC, they've got a system, they just need to get it fixed. At some point when it crumps out, they'll need a new one, and hopefully you can build the reputation that they'll buy it from you. So the buyer's journey is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So as an executive director with the Maxwell Leadership Certified team, how do you guide entrepreneurs in aligning their business plans with their personal values and leadership principles?
Well, first you got to figure out what those personal values and principles are, and that by itself is an issue. Most people haven't sat down and really figured out what are their personal values, their core values. You know, I can still quote. I've been out of the military now for 15 years. I still know what those were: integrity, service before self, excellence in all we do. And we got drilled into us, those are the Air Force core values. Well, guess what? Most people come out and say, well, my personal core values are integrity, service before self, excellence in all I do. And they get into a company and they figure out that that company said those were true, but that's not what they really are, and that doesn't align with me. And I realized that I have other personal values that I didn't realize. So I worked through several different exercises to help people figure out what their core values are. And we start big. There's a list of like 200, and we slowly start pulling them away. And some of them, they sound the same, they almost mean the same, but different things resonate with us. So we pick the ones that resonate with us, and we work down to 10, to 5, to 3, to 1. What's the big one? What really matters is the 3 to 5. And then how do you measure those? What is it you want to see in a company that relates to that? So if I'm an employee and I want to go work for a company that has these 5 core values, what's that going to look like? Right? And we work through that. Because when you go do the interview, you need to be interviewing them like they're interviewing you. And I want to see. So one thing that was really important to me when I got out of the service was I wanted to get into a company that invested in their people. It didn't just give them an evaluation at the end of the year, send it across the email and say, you're a 5 out of 10 or whatever, with no real communication. I wanted them to see a plan. So Booz Allen was doing a 360 assessment. And the every year assessment was, 60% of the assessment was looking forward. What courses do we need to educate them on? What opportunities do we need to give them? What leadership roles can we move them into to help set them up for success? That's what I wanted. And when Booz Allen said that's what I had, I got excited. I interviewed with a couple companies, and we meshed in the first interviews. It was really kind of cool. But I help people figure out their core values, figure out what that looks like, and walk through that. Same with leadership, right? I think there's 3 key things. What's the right role? What's the right leader? What's the right values or culture? And until you walk through and figure out what kind of leader really does motivate me, right? Now, we can only motivate ourselves. They can't motivate us, but they can create the environment and the culture and the different pieces to make sure that the environment where they're operating motivates me. right? Sets it up right. I had a second boss who, in fact, I had three bosses. One was really good at working with people, one really good at business development, and one on finance. And being able to understand how they work, and I could work with them, made a huge difference in my satisfaction. So we walk through all the way through that. And I even take them into, we call it the wheel of life. And it's, what is it you want to achieve in the different areas? Fitness, your personal health, your relationships, your professional success, your finance, your, let me say one, spiritual. And we define what it is you want to achieve in those areas and where are you at. And we start looking at what do you need to do to get to those. Because in that professional realm, you may be, a bunch of people in the military are burnt out. They don't want to supervise anymore. So I just want an individual contributor. So we talk through that. What does that really mean? Right? What is that role? Like right now, project manager. I want to be a project manager. Well, what area? Do you really understand what project manager is? What aspect of project manager do you want to be? Right? Are you ready to do the communication, the financial, all those different aspects? What skills do you need to develop to get to that point? And it finally starts to gel in their head. But I need to be more specific. Because we think it's probably like business. So I'm going to draw an analogy. When you are working to find a job, right? People think, oh, I'm just going to be jack of all trades, master of none. Wide application. Well, then your resume doesn't resonate with anybody. Same with your marketing as a business. I'm going to market to everybody. Well, not everybody needs that. What is that niche that you need to work with? What kind of employees that really want to work with me? So we've got to niche it down and be specific, because that's what resonates. But that it's against kind of a natural tendency. I told you I was going to try not to go on a long rant, but I think I did.
And I told you it was fine. It occurs to me, Don, that you are in the business of asking difficult questions.
That's why I love being a coach, yes.
Put people on the spot.
Not so much to put them on the spot, it's to get them to think inside of themselves. And you do get uncomfortable because there's sometimes you ask questions that you don't want to answer, that you haven't. My coach asked me a question one time about, what's your relationship with money? Because we were talking about my time and distractions and why am I doing my own automobile repair and my own lawn service and all that stuff? Why don't you hire somebody for it when you have more time to do your business? That's where you're going to get the bigger bang for the buck. And she was right. But what is my relationship with money? And where does it come from? So I went out on a walk and I said, I'm going to think about that for 20 minutes. Hour and a half later, I was still thinking into it and typing on my phone. It was deep. Wow. But that is such a powerful question. For me, anyway.
As leaders, it's so important to know what your values are, because as leaders, we're the ones that are responsible for setting the culture of the business. So I know for me, my top one is integrity, but there's also authenticity and honesty. That's our three. So our business three is the same. So then when it comes to my team, they have to respond to that as well. They have to fit it within that, otherwise they're not the right team.
Amazon does that. They've got 7 or 8 core values, and you have to, in the interview, address all of those core values. So you're doing the same thing. I want you to address those 3 core values and how you fit. And I like that. Because it saves you so much time.
Yes, absolutely. Because it means that when we have something that's difficult to deal with, we know how we're going to deal with it, even if it's uncomfortable, because we work with computers and we work with mobile phones and we work with repairs. And sometimes it doesn't go to plan. Sometimes things break more. And then we have to have a difficult conversation with the customer to say, this is what the situation is. But because honesty is one of our core values, we know how we're going to deal with it. We deal with it with honesty, even when it's a difficult conversation. So it makes it easy because we know who we are, where we are, and what we think.
I love it. I love it. There's a long story with Booz Allen, but the bottom line of it was the company was very much honesty. No matter what happens, we will always be honest. If we get something in the email that we're not supposed to have, like sometimes they would mail us other contractors' rates. We're not supposed to see that, right? So we would send it back. It would be the government who sent it to us. So we'd send it back to the government. Hey, you sent us this. We need to be open and honest about it. tell us now what we need to do. And they'd usually explore it and say, well, I want you to delete it off of all these following computers, and I want you to verify it. Okay, we did that. Well, one time, somebody had some government information, and it didn't get turned in. And because we didn't follow our own procedures, we got suspended. And then we found out that 80% of the $5 billion business came through San Antonio, and we couldn't accept work in any of those areas. It was a huge impact. But we stood by. We will always have honesty as number one. We will, and some of those people who had seen it and knew it was wrong, but didn't identify it, got removed from the company, no matter how good they were. So I think you're exactly right. You've got to know how you're going to act, because it solves all the problems when you face, not all, solves the majority of the problems when you face that situation. That's leadership. Good job.
Thank you. I think that's a positive note to finish on.
Yeah. No, that was a great example for you.
So Don, it's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you today. How can people connect with you?
The best way right now is through LinkedIn. I'm the only Don, middle initial L, Gleason. There's like 56 Don Gleasons, but middle initial L. And you'll see my picture, and career transition coach. And just send me a note. Say, hey, I met you here on this podcast with me, and let's have a conversation with you. I offer everybody a 3:30 free complimentary 30-minute conversation. Let's just figure out where you're at. I usually add a lot of value to people, even if they don't want to work with me going forward. But if we do want to work together, get in a coaching relationship or whatnot, that opportunity is there. But they're still going to get huge value.
That's brilliant, Don. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Great conversation.